Hey everybody, I'm Jeff Williams with Armor Insurance Agency, located right here in Miles City, Montana. And today we are talking about the Big Four. And by the Big Four, I mean the four main coverages that are available to you here in Montana. Now, everybody already knows you gotta have liability insurance to drive on Montana highways. But do you really understand what that is? And do you understand what those other coverages are that are available to you? Now, if you don't, then this is the video for you. We're going to cover the four main coverages. We're going to touch on deductibles. We're going to talk a little bit about loss settlement or how the insurance companies pay out. We're going to touch on the claims process, and we're going to talk about a few of the fun facts in Montana that might just influence the way you think about your insurance. So, if you're ready, then let's get started. When we're talking about car insurance in the state of Montana, we need to understand that there are four primary coverages. Those coverages are coverage A, coverage B, coverage C, and coverage D. Now, alphabetically makes it pretty easy to remember. Coverage A is the one that is required by the state of Montana, and that is the one that is going to pay when you cause an accident and cause an injury to someone else, either to their body or to their property. Coverage B is going to pay medical payments when an accident occurs, and it's going to do that regardless of who is at fault for the accident. Coverage C is when someone else causes an accident or is liable for the accident, and they either don't have insurance, which is about 1 in 12 vehicles that are on Montana roads, or if they do have insurance, it's not enough insurance to cover the medical expenses or the damages, which is a much larger percentage of the state because, well, they got minimum limits. So there is a caveat here, and that is a lot of policies will not pay property damage under this coverage because they feel it's more appropriately covered under coverage D. So let's move on and look at coverage D. Coverage D pays for damage to your vehicle, and it's regardless of who's at fault for the accident. And this is where collision and comprehensive come into play. Now, we're going to talk about each one of these coverages coming up next. Let's talk about coverage A. Coverage A is commonly known as liability coverage. And liability coverage is the type of coverage that pays the other guy. Now, this is the coverage that Montana requires. And they require it because of what they call financial responsibility. And what financial responsibility is basically if you're the cause of an accident, i.e. liable for an accident, and you cause damages, well, you're going to have to pay for those damages and by reimbursing your victim. The specific statute is Montana Code Annotated 616103. And this statute lays out what the minimum liability requirements are. The minimum liability requirements are organized into split limits. And what that means is instead of one big pot of money that everything comes out of, there are three smaller pots of money for specific scenarios. The first smaller pot of money is $25,000 for bodily injury or death of any one person in any one accident. The second little pot of money is $50,000 for bodily injury or death of two or more persons in any one accident. The third little pot of money is $20,000 for property damage in any one accident. If you are responsible for the accident, then you're going to pay. Your policy, providing this was a covered incident, your policy is going to kick in and it'll pay up to the limits, but it's going to be beneficial for you if you have more than the minimum limits. Because if you have ever had to pay any medical expense, you're going to understand that $25,000 isn't going to go very far. And if you've ever had to fix a vehicle, you're going to understand that $20,000 isn't going to go that far either. It's important to understand that it's going to be your insurance company that makes the determination of whether or not you settle or go to court. And if you go to court, then the legal fees are going to be paid by your insurance company. That's huge. That is in addition to your limits. So nothing's going to come out of those three little pots. It's going to be the insurance company paying the legal fees. And that in and of itself is huge. So let's look at the benefits of this specific coverage. There's four of them, and the fourth one's not as obvious, but there are four if you think about it. The first one is legal compliance, and I assure you, Montana has plenty of punitive statutes to basically punish you for being non-compliant. Two, financial protection. If you have an accident that is significant, then the medical fees are going to increase. The damage could be really high and it could be catastrophic. And I, again, assure you, Montana courts aren't going to care what they do to you. They will impoverish you. They will not care. So having the coverage that covers that is huge. Three, the legal expenses are paid. If you end up in court, you don't have to pay that. That's huge. And the fourth one is not that obvious, but if you think about it, the administrative claims management process, and in other words, everything that happens after the accident to make sure that they get paid, all of that is being handled by your insurance company. You don't have to deal with it. And if you did have to deal with it, you're more likely than not going to hire a lawyer to do it, and that's going to cost money. But then there's the stress, and then there's the time. You don't have to deal with that. So those are four huge benefits just from this one coverage. Let's talk about coverage B. Coverage B is medical payments coverage, or commonly known as MedPay. This type of coverage is designed to help pay for some of those medical expenses that are incurred after an accident, and it does so regardless of fault, and that's important. This type of coverage is optional. It is not required by the state of Montana, but it can be beneficial. But before we talk about the benefits, let's just touch on the features. The primary feature of this type of coverage is that it is going to cover the people in your car. So let's say your buddy is sitting in the passenger seat right next to you, and you get in a car accident. Regardless of fault, your buddy gets hurt. This type of coverage is going to pay for things like that ambulance ride to the hospital, that ER visit, some of the studies or blood tests that get done in the ER, maybe the doctor's visits afterwards, maybe it's the copays. The point is that those medical bills are going to start getting paid. This type of coverage generally has a cap significantly lower than the other types of coverages. And if I have to throw a number out, I'm going to say about $10,000. It's really going to depend on your carrier. Some carriers may be a little bit lower than that. Some may be significantly higher, and you're going to have to talk to your agent to figure that out. Let's move to the benefits. The benefit here is that it could take a while for liability to be known, particularly if you end up going to court for it. And what's happening is this insurance coverage is kicking in and it is paying your buddy's medical expenses, and that's appreciated. And that's more likely to maintain that friendship than not. So if you didn't have it and he's getting all these medical bills that are piling up, well, the likelihood of that friendship is, less. The insurance companies know this, and in my mind, this is the primary reason they offer this type of coverage, because the insurance companies know full well that by paying these medical expenses early and fast, it decreases the number of lawsuits. For all intents and purposes, there is one other kind of neat little perk that this type of coverage has, and that neat little perk is if you're a pedestrian walking on the sidewalk, minding your own business, and you get hit by a car, well, some carriers may apply this coverage and help pay some of those bills. So I think that's enough about coverage B. Let's move on to coverage C. Coverage C is known as uninsured or underinsured coverage. This type of coverage is designed to help pay the medical expenses for you or people in your vehicle when you're involved in an accident with a liable party that does not have insurance or does not have sufficient insurance to pay for all of your medical expenses. The national rate of uninsured drivers is 14%. In Montana, we do a little bit better. Our rate is 8.5%, but that's still 1 out of every 12 cars. So go walk into a parking lot, count out 12 cars, and statistically, one of them does not have insurance. In Montana, a hit and run is also considered an uninsured driver. If the liable party is uninsured or underinsured, and you have this accident, well, you end up getting stuck with the bill. And that comes out of your pocket because your liability insurance is not going to pay for this. The coverage that pays for this type of scenario is this coverage C, uninsured and underinsured. Now, some carriers may pay, but more likely than not, they're not going to. And if your carriers did pay, what they end up doing is suing the liable party for the difference or whatever they had to pay out. But usually what's going to happen is you're going to be the one responsible for having to hire a lawyer and sue the individual for relief. And if you didn't know, well, legal suits take a while. And in the meantime, you still have to pay all of these bills. So that causes stress. And this is a financial difficulty because you're out of pocket for this. And you're having to spend your time and more money to hire the lawyer. So you really need to ask the question, well, what is your time and effort worth when considering this coverage? There's a few more points that I want to make about coverage C. In the state of Montana, agents are required by law to offer this type of coverage. And there's good reason for it because this is a good coverage to have. If you are in an accident and you can't work, this coverage may also pay for your lost wages. Some carriers may also apply this coverage if you're a pedestrian and you get hit by a vehicle. Then it'll help pay some of your medical expenses as well. The real benefits with this type of coverage is, again, financial protection. It's going to help pay for your medical expenses, your lost wages, and other damages if you're injured by an uninsured or underinsured driver. It will also cover you for hit and run accidents, and it's portable, meaning, it does apply when you're a pedestrian. The biggest thing, though, is probably the legal cost mitigation. If there's a major accident and they're uninsured and your insurance coverage or your insurance company is not going to cover it, you're going to have to go after them to get your money. And that's going to take time. And if you're in the hospital, that's going to be kind of hard to do. So let's go on to coverage D. So coverage D is damage to your vehicle. And it has two main components that most everybody's going to be familiar with. The first component is collision coverage, and the second component is comprehensive coverage. Both of these types of coverages are optional. However, if you are financing the purchase of a vehicle, the institution that is financing it may require that both of these be purchased, or maybe one or the other. But the bottom line is collision coverage is the type of coverage that's going to pay for an accident that results with a collision with another object. It's pretty straightforward. It's going to cover things like you hit a tree, you hit another car, or if you roll your car. Comprehensive coverage is pretty much everything else. If it is not excluded, and that means specifically excluded in the policy, then it's generally covered. So things that are covered are going to be things like theft, vandalism, fire, natural disasters like flood, falling objects, and animal collisions. And animal collisions are included in this by convention because animals are generally unpredictable. For instance, take this example. A tree is on your left. You can drive straight. You're not going to hit that tree. A deer is on the left side of the road. You drive straight. You don't know if that deer is going to jump out in front of you or not. I think that's really all we're going to say about coverage D, except that both coverage, or the comprehensive and the collision, will both have deductibles. And we're going to talk about deductibles next. So what is a deductible? Well, a deductible is the amount of money that you have to pay out of pocket when you file a claim. And what it represents is the amount of risk that you have retained when you originally purchased the policy. Both comprehensive and the collision coverage will have a deductible, and the deductibles can be at different levels. They range generally from $250 to $1,000 or higher. The higher your deductible, the less your premium is going to cost. And inversely, the lower your deductible, well, the more your premium is going to be. And how it works is pretty straightforward. Let's say you're in an accident, you have $2,000 worth of damage, you have a $500 deductible. You pay $500 out of pocket, and the insurance company will pay the other $1,500. But this is a good time to talk about loss settlement. Loss settlement is really describing the process of how the insurance company determines what they're going to pay and how they're going to pay it out. And in general, the loss settlement basis is going to be, for your standard car insurance, is going to be actual cash value basis. What is actual cash value? Well, actual cash value refers to the estimated market value of your vehicle at the time of loss. That means it's going to take into account depreciation. The translation: if you have a total loss of your vehicle, you're not going to get a brand new vehicle. You're going to get a vehicle that is of the similar make or model in similar condition. And if they can't do that, they're going to end up cashing out. When you are considering whether you want collision coverage or comprehensive coverage, you're going to want to consider the value of your vehicle, because that could influence the decision that you make about what coverages you have. For instance, if your car is only worth, say, $2,000, then, and the collision coverage is costing you $500 per year with a $1,000 deductible, in a total loss, you'd be looking at receiving maybe $1,000. And you might just decide that, well, it's not worth paying $500 annually for that kind of protection. So what about the claims process? I think we ought to look at that next. So the claims process is generally pretty straightforward. You report the incident. You're going to do that by contacting your insurance company as soon as possible after the event. You're going to provide them with the when, what, and where of what happened. Then you're going to need to document the damage. Generally, it's going to be with pictures of your vehicle, and you're going to gather any kind of report. So if it was an accident or if it was a theft, you're going to have a police report, and the insurance company is definitely going to want that. You're going to do an insurance assessment that is typically going to involve an adjuster, and they're going to want to either physically see it or look at the pictures that you've taken. The next thing is going to be the repairs, and typically you're going to be able to take it wherever you want to, although some carriers have networks that they want you to go to in order to streamline the process. Payment is going to be you making the deductible payment, and then the insurance company typically is going to pay the repair shop directly. And then you have the claim closure. So once the repairs have been made and the payment has been made, well, it's closed. Of course, it doesn't seem that simple when you're going through the process. So there are some fun facts to consider when you are making your decision about what kind of insurance you're going to want on your policy when you're buying your policy here in Montana. And some of the things you're going to want to consider is, well, number one, we have an uninsured driving rate of 8.5%, which is about 1 in every 12 vehicles. We also are ranked second in the nation for fatal car crashes. We excel in high-risky behaviors. We have the highest rank of drunk drivers in the nation. We also have high rates of speeding and driving without seatbelts. We have some environmental challenges, and we'll call some of our rural roads, well, challenging conditions. We get snow-covered highways, and we have high deer populations. In fact, the state of Montana is ranked 4th in the nation for the most dangerous states to drive in. There are some takeaways I want you to have when you finish watching this video. The first takeaway is going to be car insurance in Montana is divided into the 4 main categories: coverage A, which is liability insurance; coverage B, which is med pay; coverage C, which is uninsured or underinsured coverage; coverage D is damage to your car, which includes collision and comprehensive. The second thing I want you to take away is that the liability insurance is the one that is required by the state of Montana, and the limits are 25,000, 50,000, and 20,000. The next takeaway is all other coverages are optional, but they do provide valuable protection. And the fourth thing I want you to take away is the fact that Montana does have some really unique risks when you drive here, and you should consider them before you purchase your policy. All right, folks. Well, this is where the magic ends. And so I really hope that you found something valuable here. I hope you enjoyed it. I certainly enjoy putting these together for you guys. And if you are considering purchasing car insurance in the state of Montana, we're here in Miles City, Montana, but we can handle policies from all over the state. So thank you very much for watching. I appreciate it. And I don't have anything else for you today. So that's about all I got. Thank you very much for watching. Take care now.